So just by way of introduction, I'm a constable from West Midlands Police. 2009, I was given the opportunity of becoming the honour-based abuse, forced marriage and female genital mutilation officer as a part-time role shared with another colleague on part-time hours. Didn't know anything about any of those areas of business really at that stage, but through networking, through social media, met Sarian and lots of other survivors who have really empowered me as an individual to feel that this is actually a life goal for me now. It's not something I will ever drop till the day I die, because I feel very passionately about it, and I thank Sarian for that. And through survivors that are speaking up about it, things are changing, which is fantastic. I've worked on a local, regional and national basis. I've worked with the Home Office, with the DPP over the last few years as well, which has been great to get West Midlands Police as well as the Metropolitan Police on the radar. Along with a couple of other forces. So it's great to have that national buy-in as well. So that's a little bit about me. And when I talk to you today, it's not from books, it's from personal accounts, such as Sarian. And we're just so honoured to have Sarian here today to be able to give you that first-hand experience, because I think it's really, really important for you to be able to have that, to be able to empower you to do things and to move forward and to tackle this issue. All right, so I'm gonna launch into it. What is FGM? Just before I start, can I ask who has got any understanding of what FGM is in the first place, please? Okay, no added pressure either with Kathy being at the back. Okay, so there's a little bit of knowledge here. Two that I really recommend that you watch after today is The Cruel Cut, which you'll see Sarian in. It's an hour documentary which was aired on Channel 4 a few years ago, which is a survivor, Layla Hussain, telling her story and telling it in only a way that a survivor can, believe me. You'll see what I mean when you watch it. Certainly I couldn't present it in the way she does. For example, having cupcakes along the South Bank, ice-like vaginas, inviting members of the public in to come and talk in her vagina booth on the South Bank. Yeah, really great. Please watch it on YouTube if you can. And another one, A Change Has Begun. Change Has Begun is something, again, that Sarian appears in, and something that I always start my training with, but it's 10 minutes, and because time is reduced today, I'm not going to do that. But again, if you look on YouTube or on Vimeo, A Change Has Begun is fantastic. And again, you can use that in training within forces, within your own forces as well. So, what is FGM? It's all procedures which involve the partial or total removal of the external genitalia or injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons, and that's the World Health Organization definition. There are 4 different types of FGM. Can you just raise your hand if you were aware of that before today? Okay, great. So, I'm going to start off with the most severe type, but before I start, it comes with a health warning. Sarian will say probably as well, you know, all the training that I've done in the past, I have occasionally had, as have colleagues, had people pass out. Not because I'm going to show you any graphic images, but purely because this is very awful. It's very traumatic for those listening to it. So you can imagine, well, you can't imagine how traumatic it is for somebody who's actually undergone it. So just a word of warning that if you do want to go out, if you're feeling a bit hot and flushed, if you go outside, or if you just let the person next to you know, and we can make sure that you're okay and give you some water. So type 3 is the most serious type, the most severe type of FGM, which involves the removal of the clitoris, the vaginal lips and the stitching of the vagina, leaving only a very small hole, sometimes only the size of a matchstick, the end of a matchstick. So you can imagine what implications that is going to have for a woman with urinating, with menstruating, with having sex, with giving birth. Now, FGM, type 3 FGM is also known as pharaonic circumcision because it's believed to date back to Egypt. When the pharaoh would go off to war, his wife would sew herself up so that when he came back from war a couple of years later, that she could prove to him that she'd been faithful to him. Because she hadn't had sex because there's no way she could because the hole was so small. So that's where it believes it dates back to. So urinating, it might take a woman with type 3 40 minutes to have a wee because it will be literally dripping. What do you think the implications of that potentially are? Urinary tract infections, kidney infections. Yeah. So I talk to doctors on a frequent basis and say, you know, if you've got a girl or a woman from an affected, you know, there's an affected FGM affected community and they're coming back to you with recurrent UTIs, you really need to be having a look at them, you know, particularly children where you've got a responsibility for safeguarding and to make sure that there's no other, you know, if they have had this done, we need to know about it as the police, but also they may have other health issues, they're likely to have other health issues which need to be addressed. Menstruating, it might take, some women with type 3 say that they don't have a blood-free day, because again, it's so difficult for that blood to come out. And if you can imagine as the women in the room who have suffered menstrual cramps, the womb will contract to get rid of that blood. So if there's nowhere for it to go, that woman or girl may well be in pain a lot of the month. So again, you may see children or women exhibiting with stomach cramps and be in pain a lot of the time. I'll go to giving birth first. There are several clinics across the country where women can be defibrillated. So basically an implement is placed under the scar tissue and the woman is opened to enable her to give birth naturally. Prior to this, women were having to give birth via caesarean, which is unnecessary and obviously has its own implications. So that is available in clinics. It's not just pregnant women who can access that service. It's also other women who aren't pregnant to be able to have, you know, easier menstruation, urination, and having sex as well. Giving birth is very traumatic. If you think about the position that a woman would be in when she's giving birth, you know, it's going to be the same position that she was in when she had this done. We'll go into how it happens in a few minutes. But flashbacks are a frequent side effect and consequence of having FGM. Having sex, it may be the husband's responsibility to open his wife on their marriage night. If a woman hasn't had FGM, it might be that she's divorced on the night if the husband finds out that she hasn't been cut. You know, all of these things are a reality for these ladies. Now, type 3 is predominantly practiced in the Horn of Africa, so we're looking at Somalia, Djibouti, Eritrea. However, we can't say in any particular country where this happens that a particular type of FGM happens. It can be any type. Okay, and it doesn't matter what type of FGM it is, there's still going to be scar tissue there, which is going to cause pain, and the psychological implications are going to be there regardless of which type. So I'm going to move to type 2, and the other thing I'll say at this point is that these types are very westernised definitions. A lot of survivors will say to us, well, actually, I'm none of these. And of course, you know, many survivors don't understand that there are different types. They don't know what type they've had. But actually, when they look at the definitions, they'll say, well, actually, I'm not in any of those. I'm between this one and this one. Okay? So type 2 is removal of the clitoris and partial or total removal of the inner vaginal lips. So it's type 3 without the stitching, basically. And type 1, removal of the clitoral hood with or without the removal of the clitoris. So if you take behind the clitoris, there is an artery. And if you think about how do you think this is done to young girls?
Quite often not in a kind of medical environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely, not in hospital, not in a medical environment. And it's, you know, very often in the bush. You know, many girls cut at the same time. And it will be women who are holding these girls down. They're not anaesthetised. They will be cut with anything that's sharp. So what is the likelihood then of that girl just trying to get away? She's being held down potentially by people who she loves, people who know her, to keep her still so that the cutter can cut where they want to cut. So what is the likelihood of that cutter then, with all that struggling, cutting somewhere that they don't want to cut? So we know that girls do die as a result of FGM because they hemorrhage through arteries being cut. So we know that some cutters are less likely to remove the clitoris and just take away the clitoral hood. And certainly in type 3, sometimes Alison, one of my midwife friends who works at one of these clinics, says, well, she'll see type 3, but she'll see that when she's opened up the scar tissue that the clitoris will still be there. Type 4 FGM is piercing. This is the one that creates most problems in terms of prosecuting, because very often there won't be any medical evidence there to see. Piercing the clitoris just to draw blood cauterising, cutting the vagina or inserting corrosive substances into the vagina which will burn and make the vagina smaller. Okay, anybody got any questions on that? Okay. So we've talked about some of these health consequences already. Obviously, if you've got several girls who are being cut all at the same time, you're looking at potential infections as well through, you know, Ebola recently, tetanus, HIV, and so children dying through that as well. Injury to adjacent tissue, again, that's something I talk to teachers about specifically, where they've had girls who've been on extended holidays, is to watch out, don't just think about the injuries to the genitalia, think about other injuries. These girls are being held down physically. They may have bruises, they may have breaks, they may have fractures. You know, they may say that they're fallen out of a tree, but it's about having it on your radar and being inquisitive and having that professional curiosity and asking those questions to build a picture. And just to bear that in mind. Obviously, death is a potential consequence. Fistulas are very common. Things that I haven't spoken about already. Sexual dysfunction. You know, women, it hurts. It hurts to have sex. It's not pleasurable. If you have the clitoris removed. I went to Kenya last year, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro for a rescue centre. You'll find some pictures on my stand in the conference hall. But we went to the rescue centre afterwards, and I'm about to go back there again in 3 weeks. We did a workshop with cutters. And one thing was clear with them, was that one of the women asked one of the other ladies, well, somebody's told me that sex is better if you haven't been cut. And the other woman says, well, how am I supposed to know? You know, I've been cut and, you know, I don't know any different. So I was like, oh gosh, here we go. Okay, I'll tell you. So I was standing there in front of 40 women telling them how better sex could be if the clitoris was left. Now, it is about education. You know, this and amongst lots and lots of other issues, because the health implications that FGM causes, women don't see as a direct result of having FGM. They just think it's something that every woman has. So it is about education and engaging with communities to raise this awareness. But at the end of this conversation about the clitoris with these Maasai ladies, there was this like wall of laughter across the room, and I said to the interpreter, what are they saying, what they're laughing at? And she said, well, one of them's just said, where can they get it sewn back on again? But just kind of emphasises the point that, you know, it is about education. I know that's quite coarse, talking about the clitoris, and there are obviously other reasons and reasons not to perform FGM, but that is one of the reasons, you know, that they too can enjoy sex. So we talked about flashbacks, and the psychological implications are huge. Our services here in the UK are abysmal in terms of FGM support for survivors. One of the clinics down in London, I think, is just about to lose funding, which is an absolute huge asset to the country. Okay, I'm going to move on. So who's at risk? Mainly African and Middle Eastern countries. So there are 28 countries in Africa that are affected. Yemen, Iraq, Iran, Syria, all of those countries practice FGM. Malaysia, Indonesia. Parts of India and Bangladesh, you might know about a case which is ongoing in America at the moment about the Bora community. A woman's being prosecuted for cutting women from the Bora in America. It is, obviously, with the immigrant population, it is a global issue and something that we all need to be aware of, and it is happening. We understand that it is happening here in the West Midlands as well as other places in the UK. The prevalence there speaks for itself, and as Paul said in his comments earlier, that it's estimated that over 60,000 girls are at risk of FGM in the UK. When I say the UK, I mean in England and Wales, and approximately 137,000 women and girls have already undergone FGM. So when does it happen? It can be any time from birth, and generally people say up until pregnancy. However, we know that there is some research being done by Coventry University at the moment, which is suggesting that older women who aren't sexually active anymore are having themselves sewn up for purity for the next life. So it's something we are constantly learning about, and we have to bear this in mind because it doesn't matter what their age is, consent isn't an issue in the law, and there are offences which are being committed. So there's a very quick, you can't really see the shading, but the shading in the middle there, which are those African countries which are affected by FGM. Some prevalence for you, which you might find shocking. In Somalia, 98% of girls and women will be cut. These are obviously about those countries and not our communities here in the UK. However, if you've got a 98% in Somalia, it stands to reason that there's going to be a significant amount probably here who are still in favour of the practice, and potentially it's still undergoing it and potentially taking their children back to Somalia to be cut.
Gillian, can I just ask, Gambia then,
Yeah.
is there something happening in Gambia that's not happening in the other countries, or is it just cultural, just one of those things, or is it because there's been actually some...
Yeah, there's nothing specifically happening in any particular country, which I think, I mean, the prevalence rates, there is work going on through DFID in different countries, and we are seeing a reduction in these prevalence rates, but there's nothing that I know of which would suggest why in some countries it's less prevalent than others. I don't know whether Sarian, with you, got any idea on that?
Well, it all depends on how the people are into it, yeah. Because there's some communities that don't practice it at all. So it depends the scale, you know, how big that community is, and that will reflect. In Gambia, there's some certain tribes that don't cut. It's the same for Sierra Leone as well. Yeah.
Okay. It's like Kenya. Kenya's 27%, but the Maasai is 97%. So it depends where you go in a particular country as to what the prevalence rate is as well. So it varies from community to community. It's generally the elder women in the community that carry out the FGM. We know that girls are taken abroad. We know that we have cutters here in the UK. We have intelligence from London, from women who are affected by FGM to say that the girls are being brought to Birmingham, to Coventry and other places across the UK to be cut. And we need that information. And my opinion is that is by building trust and confidence with our communities.
Can I ask a question? So
Yeah.
If that's the case, how many of them, I'll talk a bit about COP now, but how many of them have been linked and prosecuted?
Okay. The problem is we don't have the specific details about who they are in terms of cutters. We have the information that girls are brought to Birmingham, are brought to Coventry, and there are obviously things that we can consider doing, and we are doing, but in terms of specific names, we don't have that information at the moment, which is why I think that trust and confidence needs to be built up.
And in your opinion, the focus and service on this in terms of
Capacity. That's what you've been talking about, I suppose, all morning and all of yesterday, isn't it? Really, it's something that I feel very passionate about, and I could actually spend, you know, I could lead a team on this within West Midlands Police, and we'd be really busy, and we'd be really effective. But our capacity is we can't deal with what we've got, so that's where we are. I'm conscious I'm running out of time. Just as by way of a cutter or cutters in the UK, I don't know whether you're aware of this incident from 2012 where a doctor and a dentist in Birmingham were subject to an undercover report by the Sunday Times. An undercover reporter went into a doctor's surgery and said, I want my niece's cut. The doctor said, no, I'm sorry, I can't, but I know somebody who can. Put her onto a dentist in Spark Hill area, I think it was, or Spark Brook. And the dentist said, no, I'm sorry, I can't. But, you know, in fact, I actively campaign against it. It's all caught on covertly, it's all covertly filmed. They go off camera for an hour and then they come back onto camera saying, OK, he says, I'll do it for £750. So this is put into the Sunday Times on the Sunday morning without us ever being told anything at all about it. So by the time we get there, there's no evidence at the scene. Financial investigation revealed nothing, unfortunately. The journalist wouldn't come on board. We couldn't use the evidence, which was via the video recording because of the way that it had been captured. And CPS, unfortunately, had no other avenues to go down but to say no further action. They were both struck off their general dental and general medical registers, but in terms of a criminal prosecution, really distraught about the fact that we didn't get anywhere with that one. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just ask about that? You couldn't use the video evidence because it was undercover?
Yeah, it's basically entrapment. Yeah, so there's only certain circumstances where we can use that evidence. Yeah. Yeah.
So even though you know who that person is, you just can't go near them?
Yeah, I mean, there are other reasons as well, but which I can't really talk about in this forum. But yeah, we weren't able to use that evidence in a court as evidence. Okay, I'm going to hand you over to Sarian now to talk to you about her own experience. So I'm not going to say any more because I won't stop.
Long time talking about my experience, because it just shows to you that FGM did not work for me. No. Yeah, hello. I'm so happy to be here. So excited. I made this dress. I was telling you, yeah, especially made for this. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Sarian. I'm from Sierra Leone. Please keep an eye on the time, because when I start, you have to. Yeah, I was caught when I was only 11 years old. I was caught together with my sisters and my cousins. We were 15 in number. The oldest was 25, and the youngest was 2 years old. And it was organized by my grandmother, because this was like her own opportunity to see us through, you know, transform from that girl to a woman, you know, because she wants to be alive and watch us get married. These are one of the very important reasons why, you know, they have to put us through the Bundu Society, as it's called in Sierra Leone. Now, Sierra Leone is the only country where FGM is being done, and men are involved. Men are part of it, because it is so culturalized. It is so ingrained into the people. It's been going on for many years. You know, we know it didn't start in Sierra Leone. It was a bad habit that picked up, and I only know this through education. This is why, for me, coming to venue like this and doing talks, I enjoy doing it, because it helps me and it helps other women like myself who have been through it. I've got 4 girls already. There's another girl coming. I have to protect them. Now, if I take my girls home, the last time I took my girls home was 2009. It was the worst holiday ever. Worse, because I could not let them out of my sight. You know, I could not even let my mom, you know, take them anywhere, or my cousins or my aunties, because they could be caught. Because they know they're not there, they're here, and they cannot pass on these rights to them. That was their only opportunity. Although it was not even crossing my mom's mind, but I just cannot get my mind off it. I couldn't sleep. So since then, I've not taken my girls on holiday back home, because I'm thinking, I don't know what will happen. You know, I was caught at age 11, and it was different age, you know. So going back to when we were caught, I remember everybody come to my grandmother's house. We were all lined up. They prepared us for about a year. There were men involved. They were the Bondo drummers, and these are called the Sokos. It's not just ordinary men. The cutters in my community, in my country, they are called Sowis. Now, they, after being initiated into the FGM, which is known as the Bondo Society, they're going to be initiated into a different society called the Sowis. And this initiation is done by the men who are the Sokos. And most of the Sokos men and Sowis women are very powerful women across Sierra Leone. They even have seats in parliament. This is how powerful they are. That's why it is very different, Sierra Leone, the approach and everything, because the government used the momentum, you know, because we use drum, celebration, it brings community together. So they use that moment to do their campaigning and stuff. And because most of these men who are government officials, they are Sokos themselves. So they cannot talk against the practice or try to bring it to an end, because they will be called to order, because they are part of the society. But what we learn in recent years, their daughters have not been caught. My president, for one, he's part of the Soko Society. He's got 2 girls. I know them personally before he become president, because we all live in England here. Yeah, and they've not been caught. But my first lady, the dad, is the head in their village. Is the head Soko man. And when they were campaigning, this woman paid for over 100 girls in their village to be initiated. Now, people say they use the bits that they remove from your private part, to use it to give these men power, the Soko men, were in their different field. And we see that every day. Like now we have election, you can find girls, they chop off their private parts, their breasts, their eyes being plucked out, and they use it for rituals. This is very, very evidence, and people so much believe in things like this. So you see, FGM can be linked to witchcraft and different sort of things, you know. So going back to when we were caught, remember, everybody came to my grandmother's house. We were all lining up. They took off our clothes, they just gave us wrappers, and we were covered in white chalk. And this is to keep our body clean and smooth. Now, throughout, it took us about a week and 3 weeks in the Bondo Bush. The Bondo Bush is a secret area set apart in the bush. You cannot trespass if you're not part of the society. If you've not been caught, you can't go there. If you go there, you will be arrested. They will seize you, and they will cut you, and your family will pay a heavy fine. So people don't trespass. This is why they do it in a secret area. So there were Bondo drummers who were the Soko men. There were plenty food. Distance family across the country came together, you know, to see us go through the Bondo society. And for me, I was so excited because every girl wants to go. Every girl wants to go, you know, because if you've not been through the Bondo society, it doesn't matter how young or old you are, you feel like an outcast within that community. You can't, like if you're married, you can't cook for your mother-in-law or your sister-in-law. Nobody will eat your food because they see you as unclean. You cannot fetch water, nobody will drink it. You know, so you feel like you're alone. So children do feel like that as well. Like I want to play with my friends who've been caught, who has been through the Bondo society. If you come, they'll just walk away from you. Because topic might come up from the Bondo Bush and you're not part of it, so you cannot get involved. So they don't want to hang around with you. So for me, when we realized that we're going to go into the Bondo society, I was so excited, you know, and for the gifts and stuff, you know, I have to watch my mom and my grandmother put together a box full of clothes and shoes for me and my sisters. I was so excited, you know. But sadly, my dad is from a non-practicing community, and they are called the Creole tribe. But my mom and my dad separated when she was pregnant with me. Now, everything come so clear as when I am an adult now, you know, that my dad did left my mom for a woman who's not been caught, and they were still together until he passed away last November, you know. So everything came clear because I know what I know now, and I ask questions. So that was how we will end up with our grandmothers, you know, to have us caught and see us through the ceremony. Because in Sierra Leone, if you are not married to a man, traditionally, that child belongs to the woman's family. So that was our fate, me and my sisters. So our grandmothers and uncles and aunties from my mom's side have to make decisions for us. So it was time for we to go into the Bondo Bush. We lined up, there was food, drinks, music. Everybody was so happy for us. You know, the whole town, everybody came out, and distance family. We were all so merrying. And then we danced into the Bondo Bush. When we get there were different partitions. And then one side we have to line up. We have no knickers. But at that time I didn't have any breast, no nothing. Yeah. For those that have a breast, they have the wrappers up here. We that don't have, we have our wrappers down here, but we're covered in chalk, white chalk. So one by one we were taken away, and for every time a girl is taken into the next room, they would hit the drums harder, the women would cheer, you know, and I would just scream along with them because I was so excited. It was so, if you see the joy in their faces, you know, you can only tell that they're not doing this because they want to hurt you. They're doing this because they believe it's the right thing they're doing for you. So I was so happy not knowing what it means for me as that young girl or as the woman I am today. Then it was my turn. As excited as I was taken into the next room, blindfolded like my other sisters. I was thrown on the floor. The next thing, there was the largest woman. She sat on my chest, and I was a very skinny child. And to myself, I was thinking, that's not what I was expecting, you know, because for every time they keep saying, you're not clean, you're not clean, I thought maybe it's going to be like baptism where they would just wash you with all this traditional medicine and like feed you, because when girls go in there and they come out, they really look good, you know. So I wasn't expected to be thrown on the floor, spread my legs apart, you know, other people pinned my shoulder down, and this big woman sat on my chest just to keep me still. And that was when it hit to me. And then I felt a sharp cut between my legs. And at this time, I did not even know what it is they were cutting. I just know they were cutting something off my private part, and it was so painful. It was the worst day ever. I screamed so loud that the drums and the women there could not suppress my voice, and they stuffed my mouth with a piece of cloth to stop me from screaming, so that the other girls waiting to be caught and people outside of the bush would not hear the sound of my voice. This woman still sat on me, and to my side there were pots with traditional herbs. Now remember, there were no anesthetics, because for you have to walk the walk, you have to dance the dance. It's what makes you a woman. When you feel that pain, it shows you that pain is all you know as a woman. These are things they tell us. So it's only people who are really educated and probably they know the consequences of girls being caught together on the same spot with the same blade, what it means. Like if that time we were exposed to like any sexually transmitted disease, or maybe HIV or something, or hepatitis B, that would have been all of our fates, because we were caught by the same woman. And one thing I remember very clear, my mom and my grandmothers and my aunties never told them how much they have to remove. This woman just decided to cut, and they are practically drunk. Alcohol is part of the items our family have to provide for the cutters. They will dance throughout the night before daybreak when they would do the cutting. So they're practically drunk. They could cut into your skin, into your vein, they could cut into anything. Now, after the cutting, the pots with herbs, they now place the herbs into the wound. This was like a medication. Now, I still cannot tell which one was more painful, the cutting or the medication they applied. It was so painful. And then they wrapped me up and take me into a separate room where my other sisters and cousins were sitting. We have to keep our legs straight. Unlike North Africa, after a girl being caught, they will bind your legs. No, they'll just wrap you around and put a cloth round your waist like a knicker, they wrap it, and then you have to keep your legs straight. Now we have to stay like that for the next 3 days. Nobody will tell you to pass urine or go to the toilet. It was so painful. Now on the third day, for the first time, we have to go to the riverside to wash. That's when they will wash away the herbs and see how we're healing up. And when we get to the riverside, everybody stopped bleeding but me. I was bleeding heavily. When they removed the cloth, it was pumping. Now they have to wash the medication, and they were telling me off that I was screaming, I did not keep still and stuff. And when they wash away the herbs, they realized that all of my clitoris were not removed. I was taken back into the bush, And this time I knew what was going to happen because it was not like the first time. Even my mom and my grandmother could not face it this time. They could not witness me being caught for the second time. I thought I was going to die. I was forcefully pinned down and they chop off every little bit. Now, according to the definition you just heard, it will be a type 2. But I am like an empty shell. They cut off the hood, the inner lips, everything, top to bottom. And then they place the same medication and I have to wait another 3 days before I could wash like my sisters. So this is my definition of FGM. So every other girl or woman who have been through this practice will tell you a different experience. Like my sister, who is now campaigning with us, and she live here in England. She's got 3 children. She was struggling to have a relationship because she cannot engage sexually. Now, when I know all what I know, because she would never talk about sex. When you start to talk about sex, my sister would walk away. Then I knew there was a problem. But when I went to study about FGM here, after all my experience, you know, I get to know my problem. I get to know that FGM is wrong. I get to know that I'm going through what I'm going through because I was caught many years ago. To child labor at St. Thomas's Hospital in England, London. I was pregnant with my daughter. She's 14 years old. And I went to antenatal check like any other woman. But for me, I believe that sometimes, you know, people who are looking after us, like midwives and doctors, they don't want to offend you because they know this is a cultural thing, you know. So questions were not asked. And for me, it was normal because when the war came, we moved from Sierra Leone to the Gambia, and I realized everyone is crazy about the practice. Then I realized they were doing the right thing for me, that, oh, all women have to go through this. So my family did the right thing for me. So it became normal. I accepted that. But when I moved to England, it was different. Got pregnant, and all this time, never experienced an orgasm in my life. All we know is pain. That's all we know, you know. Went to the hospital, the time they gave me to give birth, came, packed my bags, and I was there for 4 days. The baby would not come. 4 days. Because the way I was caught, I had scar tissue around my vagina opening, and scar tissue don't stretch. That was the problem. One by one, those doctors and midwives will come and examine me in shock. They'll call somebody else. Nobody will say nothing to me. This one will look in shock. I thought I was going to die. I was just lying there. And then a Jamaican woman came, and then she was looking at my notes, and she said to me, I don't think you would need this cesarean session that they think you need. He said, I think it's because of your circumcision. That's why the baby would not come. She said, I'm going to cut you near your anus to give way for the baby to come out, and then I will sew it up again. It was like that woman gave me life back because she did say something to me. Nobody was, all those days, nobody said anything to me. And when she did that, half an hour the baby was there, I was fine. So that was the point for me. I said, no, I'm not going to be quiet about this. I have to talk to my sisters. I have to talk to my friends. I have to talk to people within my communities, because I remember how women die every day giving birth back home, and nobody can link this to what we've been through. My mom spent 10 days giving birth to my younger sister. I was there. I was 16 years old. She was removed from the hospital into the Bundu bush because they told her that somebody placed a curse on her. So this is always And these so-called men have to reverse that traditionally. We visit our mom in and out because we've been through the Bondo Society. So we go in and say, you know, that was not the case. So that was my first stop when I went back home to discuss with my mom. That what happened to you happened to me. It only didn't take 10 days because these people have extra help and they are professionals. So for me, I have to like engage with my sister and said, do you know that might be a problem? And then I introduced her to Joy Clark, who is a specialist midwife. I was working with her at that time. Joy Clark invited my sister. She went in and they examined her. Behold, when they cut her, they stitched part of her vagina opening because they cut into her skin and locking part of her vagina opening. So she was suffering pain because it was too tight for her to have penetrated sex. That was the problem. She didn't know. So they have to do like a reversal, undo the stitch, and make it look the way, the size, the normal way it should look better, you know. And now she can have comfortable sex. So there are a lot of women out there like myself who are going through these problems, and we need to get to them. We need to talk to them. First of all, people don't engage in this kind of conversation because it's a taboo where we come from. I remember people run away from me when I stopped them in Peckham to talk about FGM. People don't want to engage because they just fear that something bad will happen. Because it's the silence, they tell you that something bad will happen to you if you talk about what happened, especially for Sierra Leoneans. It was very difficult. But now people stop me, you know, in Peckham and say, I know you from somewhere. Oh, I saw you on the news, you're talking about FGM. You know what you said is true, it happens to me, and that's exactly what I'm going through. You know, so when I run workshop, we invite women like myself, and we can have a safe space to discuss about issues. We invite their partners where we have a safe space to discuss about how FGM affect them as well as men. It does affect men as well. Because if you love your wife and you want to have sex, you know, pleasurable sex with them, it's very difficult because they cannot concentrate. It took me time before I could like have an orgasm because I get to realize that I've got to know my body and I've got to be ready. But your culture tells you that you don't have to be ready. You have to be submissive because he's your husband. You cannot deny your husband sex. So this is where the problem is. Am I good with her?
Do you know what? I kept waving at you.
I can't even see you. Am I done? Okay, so there will be time for questions. Sorry, thank you.
I'm conscious that you're due to have your baby in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to open it for questions in a moment, but I'm aware that we haven't touched on why this is done. It's done for a variety of reasons, depending on where you're from. Sarian's talked about, you know, it's a rite of passage into womanhood. You know, when you become a member of the Bondo Society, you are then a woman, regardless of what age you are. Yeah? You are then a woman, and you associate with the women. It's a rite of passage for the women of Kenya as well. And therefore, that's why we need to see FGM also in light of early forced marriage as well. Because very often when FGM is carried out, then we have to think and have it on the radar that there potentially is an early forced marriage imminent as well, potentially. So it is about marriageability. So if you're not cut, you won't be married. And I know of women who have been divorced on their wedding night because they've been found not to be cut. It has deep cultural significance. It's perceived to be a religious requirement. It is not in any holy book anywhere, but it is perceived still to be a religious requirement. I've recently done an operation at the airport, stopping people coming in from affected countries, and still, even last week, I'm being told, well, yes, that's something that my religion requires. But who am I as a white UK woman to say, no, it's not? You know, are they going to believe me? You know, as opposed to what their imam or their priest is saying? I think not. So again, there's another piece of work there in involving religious leaders and engaging with them to make sure that that message is that this is not a religious requirement. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to leave it there and ask if there's any questions. Yes.
Clearly, obviously, the women in the village get on and do what they need to do to get girls ready and everything else. What is the, I mean, you say there's involved 4 men, and that sounds like quite a controlling role around the whole kind of, the whole issue. Is there any movement in that thinking from the men in those communities? Because the feeling that I get is until you get some movement in the thinking of those that have that power and control, the likelihood of change is always going to be less. If it's just women in the communities that are saying this isn't right,
Yeah.
you get that buy-in from the men in the community who seem to be the ones that hold that kind of power.
Yeah, well, because you see, men are taught to believe that women who have not been caught would be promiscuous, and no man wants to marry a woman who will sleep around. And even men in England here, in my community here, they have that belief. So it just takes education, you know. We're getting there. It's the way we respond to it here, like Sierra Leoneans here. It's different to the way, even when I went back home, I have to treat very consciously because I'm not worried about me. Now I've got a British passport, something happened, I could run to the embassy. But my mom, my sisters, my aunties, something really bad would happen to them because they would attack them and hurt them. So I have to be very careful. Even when I start campaigning, my dad never knew that we were caught. Until when he saw me on BBC News, that was when he called me. And he apologized for not being there. So it's very difficult. These are not things you talk about. But men just believe that all women have to be caught. And some men here would tell you when they come to our workshop, they will tell you that, oh yes, women who have been caught, they are cleaner and they are better. It's all nonsense because this is what they've told them. They groomed them to believe that. And sometimes these men don't know any other way. Just like the women.
What work is, or is already that we could probably we might be able to look at or whatever to try and engage the men of those communities to start to understand the consequences of this practice. So what we do, we run workshops and we try to invite men and women as well, you know, because we cannot do this without men. And the communities where we're from, men are the ones who make decisions. Yeah, so yeah, that's
and I think very much so it's around capacity. So as much as there are many individuals across the UK who are wanting to do more work, A, there isn't the funds. But B, is the capacity issue within the police force. We did start within the West Midlands doing some work with some men in Sparkbrook, Sparkhill area. I think it's Chief Superintendent Richard Moore had done we started some great work with the Somali community in Sparkhill and Sparkbrook, and he was really, really keen to get in with the men because this is a conversation that has to affect everybody. Absolutely everybody. Nobody is exempt from knowing about this. And although, obviously in Sierra Leone, the men are very much involved with it, in many communities that they aren't. It's women's work and the women get on with it. But the nitty-gritty is that this is done for the benefit of the men. And absolutely, we have to be working with the men to change mindsets. Kathy.
Thank you both. It was an amazing presentation from both of you. And Sarian, thank you so much. I found it so moving. I just wanted to ask you, do Sierra Leoneans in the UK, is there a practice as there is with Somali parents of taking their kids back to Sierra Leone to get them cut, or is it done in the UK, or a bit of both? And the second thing was whether in Sierra Leone, does it depend on what religion you follow, whether you get your children cut, or is it more of a tribal issue? Is it basically all religions in Sierra Leone?
Yeah, I think it's more of a tribal issue because I'm a Christian both sides of my parents. I was baptized two weeks old, same for my sisters. But the community where we're from, you're part of that. So it's nothing to do with religion or not. You see pastors cut their daughters, imams cut their daughters as well, just to make them feel included, because they want us to like get married within our community so we don't go far. And if you've not been caught certain communities and you're from certain communities, the chances of you getting married is very, very slim. Yeah. And then what was the other question?
Sierra Leoneans living in the UK, would people go and get their
Yeah,
hair cut back in Sierra
they
Leone?
would, because like I said, you have to walk the walk and dance the dance. Yeah. So we don't believe in like anesthetics and stuff. You have to go through the pain and stuff. And the cutting is just a beginning of a very long journey for the girl. Like we take between 3 to 4 weeks in the bush, because they have to teach you a lot of other things.
But how on earth can police here help stop the Sierra Leonean UK residents and citizens taking their kids back?
Education.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, sorry to interrupt, but for me, absolutely, this needs to be put into PSHE. Kids of all ages need to know about what FGM is. So as Sarian said, you know, she was excited to have this done. She didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but she knew it was going to be a party. She knew there was going to be a celebration, and she was excited for it. She can't wait. It's what's happened to her sisters and her cousins. But it's about if they understand what the issues are, as harsh as that might be, because this is very, very culturally sensitive, and you know, an intimate part of the body. But again, with the CSE agenda, you know, with sexual assault, all of this, it needs to be, you know, on the PSHE, that we can empower children to speak up and tell children when they're worried, so that we might be able to step in and use things like FGM protection orders to be able to stop them going abroad. But for us to be able to do that, we need teachers to be more aware of what it is, be prepared to talk to children about it, not be afraid to, and be approachable, and then for the children to know about it so that they can raise the alarm about themselves and their siblings, all their friends. Everybody needs to know about it. It's not just the affected communities that need to know.
I always said, if I don't know what I know now, and probably if I've not traveled to this country, my girls would have been caught by now. Because remember when the war came, I went to Gambia and I realized that, they're doing the right thing for us. All women have to go through, because it was the same. They were as crazy as the practice in Gambia. Like, look at my girls. They like champions. They talk about FGM in their school. They talk to their teachers, you know. So it's just education.
Okay. Can I just ask a question about that? Just while you're talking about your children, it was when you went over there. Was there a pressure on you to get them cut while you were there? So
no.
Did your family know that they weren't cut? And
no, they know. They know, because when I start the campaign, I get straight to my mom, because I have girls. I only have one son. My oldest is a boy. All girls, you know. And by then I didn't have my youngest daughter. So I have 3 girls, and I was going to go home and see my mom for the first time. So I have to talk to her about my experience and her experience to get her to understand. And by that time, my sister, whom she had at that time, she has not been caught. And I said to her, because I look after my mom, you're not going to use my money to cut her. So if you caught her, forget about me, and had give her reasons. And then she accepted it. My sister have not been caught. So, but that fear was there. Me going home with my girls, they're young, and I can't stop the community if they come after my children, because you could be sleeping. They're gone.
That's really, really important in terms of our risk assessing as well here in the UK. Because when we're talking about children's services and the police doing their safeguarding with PPU, it's not just about what parents think. If they're going abroad, what do their family think? Are they able to protect them? And this new legislation in 2015, failing to protect your child from FGM, strict liability offence. You know, if you come back having taken them to an area where you know FGM is prevalent and they've been cut, tough.
Yeah.
Tough. Yes.
I'm the BCU commander for Derby.
Hello.
And that list of countries you displayed, I've got residents from every one of those. And Kathy sort of touched on the question I was going to ask her. What should I do?
Okay. Oh, come on, I've got a slide for that. I'm going to slip through because I kind of, when I practiced, it came out perfectly with timing, but you'll see that there's quite a few. Right, so my key messages to you are FGM and dealing with FGM. The key things are prevention as well as prosecution. We are constantly getting hammered as police force about the fact that there haven't been any prosecutions, and absolutely dedicated and to getting that prosecution, and because that will send a very, very strong message to communities to say, this will not be tolerated in the UK and we will prosecute. There are many, many challenges to getting that prosecution, as was heard earlier with the Chief Constable talking about that in the main conference hall as well. But obviously the prevention side, there is an issue there, I suppose, because it can't be measured, can it? We can't really measure the preventative aspect of me going to the airport with a host of other officers last week and actually giving them out these pens that you've got, and giving the children one to their teacher, to give them to the teacher when they go to school this week and say, the police officer at the airport asked me to give you this, it's got an important message on it. You pull out the banner and it gives you further direction and what to look out for. We can't measure if that's had an impact. Unfortunately, we can't measure how, by going to a community group and speaking to them about FGM, how the fact that I'm a friendly face of the police officers, police force. I want to help you. I'm here as your friend. I want to help you. I want to help you protect your children. I understand this issue. We can't measure how that has stopped, if that may have stopped somebody, or it may have changed somebody's mind about having their own children cut, or that might have influenced them speaking to somebody else about it. We can't measure any of this. But it has to be done. If we're going to end FGM in a generation, which is what the government pledges, then we need to be doing this preventative work as well. We need to be investing in officers, and as Paul said earlier, in his speech, it's not just a police issue, but we do share it with all of those other organisations. Together we can tackle these issues, and together with the greater force. So prevention, community interaction, building that trust and confidence. If you think about these communities, very many of them, particularly if they're new to the UK, come from countries where potentially police forces and authorities and governments are corrupt. So why would they trust us if that's their belief and their understanding and their experience from their own country? Multi-agency training, staff need to be trained. One of the issues is that people don't understand the issue. We need to get to grips. I mean, this is nothing compared to the normal presentation that I give out. It's normally about an hour and a half to 2 hours, which is extensive, I appreciate. But you would really, really get to the bottom and the depths of what this issue is and how you can help. We need people to understand so that they have the confidence to be able to make those referrals so that we can investigate. Use of civil orders. I talked about the FGM protection orders again. We need those. Yes.
So I've been heard there's perhaps 150 female children at least in that community.
Yeah.
98% of Somali women cut.
In Somalia, yeah.
Are those 150 girls at real risk?
They are potentially at risk, yeah. Whether it's from their own parents because of their own views, or whether it's because if they go on holiday, they're potentially at risk from other family members as well, and community, because it is under that honour-based abuse umbrella. But also we understand that cutters are flown here to the UK. So
given the prevalence in that community, is that something I should be proactively asking my detectives to investigate?
I think so. I feel that we need to be investing in that. However, what I would say is that to be able to link in with communities effectively, the person or the people who are doing it need to understand the issue thoroughly, because otherwise you lose credibility. And I think you need to know, we need to make sure that those people who are working in the communities have a thorough and sound knowledge of what the issue is. Does that make sense?
The only thing I would say
Sorry.
is actually sometimes it brings to fore conversations that otherwise cannot
Absolutely.
cannot take place.
Yeah.
Because it's brought to the open public agenda then it makes it okay for people to talk that otherwise would not have talked, because
Yeah.
it is a taboo subject.
Yeah.
And wouldn't otherwise talk about
Yeah.
it anyway. So it
Yeah.
almost gives that
Permission and absolutely, as Sarian said, you know, what I always say to officers, do not be afraid to ask that question. You know, I'm joked at in my office. I'm a child protection officer on my day job, and I'll go out to a willful assault and speak to the child, and I thought, oh, you're from Kenya or you're from Somalia. Oh, I've got a special interest in this area of business. We've done the willful assault bit. And, you know, tell me a bit about your experience with FGM. And then I'll write it all about on the portal and about their own opinion on it and any intelligence on a NIMS log and all this. But that sort of stuff isn't done. You know, we're ordinarily speaking with these people. We've got an opportunity to get that information, but people are afraid to talk about it, and I get why.
And sometimes that's the only time somebody asks them. Sometimes they want to talk, but they cannot talk with their auntie or their sister.
I've never had a problem. Never had a problem with people not wanting to talk about it. Yeah.
I'm just interested in your involvement with health in all this.
Yeah.
From two parts really. One, as a pregnant mother getting asked by the midwife the question that we have, I'm from Oxfordshire, have you been cut? With no explanation around that, and whether or not there's something we need to do in relation to changing the asking of the question. But secondly, I come from a child protection background as well. And our discussions around asking pregnant women, so in Oxford we have the Rose Centre, we have a really good centre for dealing with FGM, but asking pregnant women about their, if they've been subject to FGM, what the likelihood is of any female child being subjected to it going further, and then making the child protection referral, and the kind of data sharing and issues around that, because quite often health haven't wanted to share with us. So from a policing perspective really, what's been your kind of,
Okay.
how's it worked in the Westminster?
Well, it depends, I suppose, which local authority you go to. And health, you know, they have data protection to abide by. But where we're talking about children here, you know, they've got a responsibility.
But the child's not born yet, and that's my...
Yeah, so if you've got a mother that's had FGM, who's about to give birth to a female child, Coventry Hospital for a while were referring all women. They don't do that anymore.
So that mother, she's pregnant, but she's got an 8-year-old female child, she's got a 12-year-old female child, and she's been subject to FGM. Health service won't tell us or social care.
No.
That
They will have a conversation. They will have a conversation with her about FGM. She's pregnant. Yeah? She's disclosed to them she's had FGM herself. She will have a conversation with them about the fact that what are your views on FGM? This is the law in the UK. Are you aware of it? Sometimes they will make a referral if they're concerned about those children.
Yeah, really.
If they're concerned about the legitimacy of what the mother has told them, or if she's told them, but to be fair, who's likely to say, yes, I'm for FGM?
But I think they put it on the red book.
Yeah. If they examined an 8-year-old boy
Yeah.
showed signs of sexual abuse, they'd tell us in a heartbeat.
Yeah. But if you've got a mum who's had FGM who's telling you that she's against FGM and she hasn't had her daughter's cut, because of where it is, if we were to medically examine those children,
The responsibility is to the child, not the mother.
yes,
If the information that, or the evidence that we've got suggests that the risk to that child is potentially high, then the authorities should have a duty to act and inform partners such as policing. So I actually get your point.
yeah, because that conversation needs to happen.
We're operating blind here.
Yeah, but
In a huge dark silo. Yeah.
but the data.
That's what's really struck me. I've got colleagues who, like yourself, who are policing communities and they're in the dark.
Yeah,
Completely blind.
yeah, but due to data protection, which is the reason why they won't share the information.
Well, I've
Because-
had a
because
conversation
one-
with the Minister for Vulnerability.
Yeah.
Direct conversation about that, and she's categorically said there is nothing in data protection that prevents health from sharing this information with other agencies. That's the message I've had back from the Minister directly.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe that needs to come.
Something then that we could have a look at and publicise, isn't it?
They're not.
Yeah.
No. So many times data protection is used as a smokescreen to hide from work or difficult situations.
And that's why
Because-
I mean, as an example for what we did in Oxfordshire, is we started up no names consultations with health, police, and social care to try and overcome some of the issues. And eventually, it became extremely and is very positive now. But the health issues were
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with children's services as well, to be fair, you know, you might refer, for example, that example, where you've got a woman who's had FGM and she's got 2 daughters, try and get that through the front door at social services.
I think sometimes it's
You haven't got consent of mum to refer it.
yeah, sometimes it's a relationship between the doctor and the patient, or the nurse and the patient as well. Because like when I went to do my smear test, it is very visible that I don't have anything down there. You know, this nurse was talking to me about everything, about my children, about everything, but she never asked me about what happened to my vagina. And when I was dressing up, I asked her, did you notice anything down there? And it's only because I know, and I'm a campaigner, you know. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, you were examined. Did you notice anything down there? She said, oh, your clitoris? I said, yes, I was circumcised. She said, oh, I didn't know whether you would feel offended. Yeah, and she was so happy that I said something.
That's my concern about the maternity.
Yeah.
Asking you mums, have you been cut? But having any sort of conversation. Is it
Yeah.
I think they do. I think it depends which maternity service you're looking at here. You know, some midwives, a lot of midwives are very good at asking those questions and engaging. And making their own assessments. The health have got their own safeguarding assessment and risk assessment for FGM. And, you know, if they tick, you know, the boxes and they believe there's a concern, then they will refer. But purely on mum having FGM and having girls, that referral won't come through.
That's the end of the session. I knew we were going to overrun, and I knew there was going to be no problem with all the questions. Can I say that if any of you want to stay, you're happy to take further questions, so maybe move down the bottom and come and have a sort of broader conversation. But I think we'll sort of formally finish the session there.